This meeting is being held remotely as an alternative means of public access pursuant to Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022 and all other applicable laws temporarily amending certain provisions of the open meeting law. You are hereby advised that this meeting and all communications during this meeting may be recorded by the town of Hingham in accordance with the open meeting law. If any participant wishes to record this meeting, please notify the chair at the start of the meeting in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20F, so that the chair may inform all other participants of said recording.
Okay, I think that does it. I guess we do the roll call, a call to order. We have we have a quorum because we have three of our members here. And so we'll say, if each of those members can say aye in their name. I'm John Rice, aye.
John
Heather
Lawler, aye.
Cashman, aye.
Okay,
Heather
great.
Cashman, aye.
Let's discuss the minutes. John, were you able to get the latest minutes completed so that and then sent, or what is our status on those?
I don't know. I was under the impression that Kristen was taking up the baton with minutes as of the last meeting.
Kristen, did you do that? I know you're not on the committee officially, and we thought you would be by now, but were you able to get to that? If not, we can go back to the telecast and we could approve them next meeting.
No, I have not, simply because I'm not a member officially.
Right. Okay, yeah, well, we dropped the ball on that. So, John, Kristen's having a little struggle with getting the town to do the interview with her and scheduling it. So we're going to try and fast track that as best we can. We still have the recording. So if you want to take notes this time around until we get her officially on, or Kristen, if you want to take notes, assuming that we'll get you on, we can decide that. Perhaps, John, you could take notes, but at the end of the day, we have this telecast that we can replay.
Right.
Okay. All right. So let's table on those minutes till the next meeting in terms of approval. Okay. So we're next on to finances update. And so Michelle, do you want to go over that document that you sent to us in terms of where you're at currently?
Sure. So today Dave Jones sent, he has a collection of links, and I updated the link to our budget to actual. So we've received one payment from the town of Hingham so far. So we are at, I believe, $130,000 for the fiscal year. Last year we collected $525,000 from the town of Hingham in cable funding.
Okay.
I would note, if I could just kind of spot a trend, I do have a meeting with Michelle Monsinger just on general financial issues, budgeting, capital, that kind of thing. But the trend is we're $10,000 down from where we were 2 years ago. So the way, just for anyone not familiar with our budgeting process, Michael Leary, who used to be on the cable committee, and I spent a lot of time on this kind of understanding. So it's probably a good idea to go back through it since Michael's not on the committee anymore. Harbor Media receives 95% of the operating cable funds that the town of Hingham receives. And so when a quarterly check comes in from Comcast and Verizon, Harbor Media receives 95% of that, of the operating funds. They have separate checks that come in for capital. We don't receive that. So we build a budget primarily based on budget to actual from the prior fiscal year. And so that's operating income that covers our facility cost, our HR cost, which would include team salaries, health insurance, employer taxes, that kind of thing, facilities cost, rent, utilities, that kind of thing. So we're budgeting for that, but then what we receive has been less each year. So what we're doing is monitoring that on a budget to actual. That's the link that you will see in the links that Dave Jones provided you.
Right, and some of the items that that are you concerned with in terms of how you're budgeting and what your actual is really going to be? And I know it's partial for the year, so there might be things that get backloaded towards the latter part of your year. But are there areas where you feel there's a discrepancy that you're concerned about?
Yeah, I wouldn't say discrepancy, but I would say
just a difference.
Yeah, no, you're right. So basically what we have to do, what I do for budgeting is there are things I have to hold off on because I don't know what our last quarter is going to look like, our last quarterly payment from the town of Hingham. And you can't not pay the employees, you can't not pay rent. So we also have to anticipate every January is open enrollment for health insurance. There may be employees currently not on our health insurance, but have a life-changing event and all of a sudden need to go on our health insurance. So I always have to plan for those emergencies. Also, or not emergencies, but changes in our budget. And Harbor Media has actually less than 50% of last year's funding in reserve. And we've had to pull from that the last fiscal year since we started the grant program, which was funded with excess reserves. We have had to pull from our reserve fund to cover capital cost and to cover budget shortfalls because we were several $1,000s. We collected several $1,000s less from the town of Hingham last year than what was budgeted, and what was budgeted was less than the prior year, if that makes sense. Just trying to be very, of course, fiscally responsible, but actually conservative in how we're budgeting, because that is the trend, that there is less cable funds coming in each year.
What about the capital? We've discussed that you are asking the town to reimburse you for certain capital things that we had discussed.
Yes.
Could you give an update on that process? Are you still waiting for it, or do you need to make a formal proposal again? Is there any way what we can do to help fast track that process?
Sure. So actually, believe it or not, John, it was about a year ago that Ryan and I presented our capital wish list of what we wanted to buy for the Harbor Media team. Technology wise, there were edit stations, monitors, a drone, because we do quite a bit of drone footage, but the Hingham team has never owned their own drone, that kind of thing. So the cable committee reviewed that and recommended purchasing and reimbursement, but the town of Hingham actually reminded us that in the contract, they only consider reimbursement for capital for equipment that is installed in a town-owned building. That could be town hall, that could be Hingham High School, that kind of thing. So at the time I met with town administration and we said, let's talk again at the close of the fiscal year. So that was June 30th. I pulled together, we had a conversation and then I pulled together a formal request. So I have spoken to Michelle Monsinger regarding that formal request, and we're meeting again. I made a strong case for $11,000 out of $18,000 worth of capital that we purchased last year, and we're meeting in another week or so to decide if that's possible.
So if I might interject, I know I've had discussions with the town manager and the select board about this issue. They are open for you to be able to propose capital things that they feel are appropriate for the execution of government programming, which is how I kind of characterized. And I advocated as strongly as I could that that what we're recommending, because it's being used for government programming as well as being used for other programming. It shouldn't be penalized just because it's being used for education programming or public programming or whatever other things that you're doing. It doesn't necessarily have to be housed at town hall. That's ludicrous. That's not the way equipment works. They understood that. So I think we just need to go back and reiterate that to both Tom and maybe Joe Fisher and say, look, we think you should fund these things. This is what this capital is for. It doesn't have to necessarily just be a robotic camera or telecommunications device in the town hall. So I think what we just need to do is, if you want to go in with me or with Dave or whatever, and we'll make a stronger effort. Now, maybe Michelle will see your point of view about that, but I feel strongly that should happen. So.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate the committee's support. We tentatively have a meeting set up next week. Michelle was traveling after we met last time. So we've got another discussion coming, and then I will definitely let the cable committee know about that. And we did make adjustments to our request last year. So for example, we returned the drone. We bought and returned the drone. And, I think that some of those decisions were appreciated in my conversation with Michelle, that what we were asking for is directly tied to government and education programming.
Yeah.
It's about 70% at least every month of our programming. But, John, I would agree with you too. If 20% of our edit stations are used to edit public programming, why wouldn't that be covered? But it is something that's in the contract, so we may need to address it formally.
Yeah, I mean, even if they're asking you to do town meeting and you have to go out and rent cameras, or you have to go out and you have to use the cameras that you have.
Yeah, we had
You're doing the education.
Mhm.
You're doing the high school graduation. You're using the drone effectively. I mean, there's all sorts of reasons why this programming fits under the aegis of government programming.
Yeah. So
Right,
yeah, appreciate it. We'll keep you posted on that. And we, like I said, we have a meeting next week.
John, do you have something to add?
No, I just feel bad that you don't have, if you didn't get the drone you wanted, but you could say, hey, you could give us a rent-free space in town hall, and then it'd be in town hall.
Mhm.
Do you want to do that? I don't know. That's my.
You know what? That's not silly. And those are some of the things that Michelle and I are going to talk about, is long range forecasting, because what is new last fiscal year, what was new was the new contract. And the new contract said, instead of Harbor Media having about 1 year's reserve where we had been paying our own capital and being able to make up for funding shortfalls, but maintain our level of service, maintain our budget, was the fact that we had the reserve. But the new contract said keep 50% of the prior year's funding in reserve instead of almost a year. The funding of the capital didn't change in the contract, but then funding the grant program did. So we're just at an intersection where we need to have a conversation. I think all of it will be worked out, but you can't keep funding a grant program and then making up for budget. It's not budget shortfalls, it's funding shortfalls. People are cutting the cord. Everybody knows about this. So if we're receiving less every year, but we're maintaining or exceeding our level of service and paying our capital and funding a grant program, those things aren't going to exist together for too long unless we make some other arrangements.
Well, I think that a number of things in terms of being able to perhaps raise more revenue, maybe you have to look at expenses in a different sort of way. There's ways that you're probably going to have to do that. What I'm interested in is that on the capital expenditure from Comcast was, I think, something like $25,000 a year, and the Verizon contribution was I'm trying to remember 10 or something like that. In other words, are you giving them a budget looking at that money in terms of that pot of money that the town has? Are you sending them a line item of like equipment requests, both from previous years but also upcoming right now? And do you, I'm not sure we see that. Do you just send that to the town? Can we contribute to that if you show us that, and that way we can get a heads up on what kinds of things you're looking for, and then we can help advocate for that?
Yeah, my understanding is it's not done that way. It's done by request, and that first we present our capital request to the cable committee, where there could be discussion, research, is there an alternative, that kind of thing. And then with your committee recommendation, we go to the town. I think what was different last year is just that the cable committee's understanding, and then town administration looking at the contract, rightfully so. There's a sentence right there that says that. Those were two different understandings. checking with the Harbor Media Board.
That's why we changed it in the agreement,
Yeah.
because
So,
it got changed by the town by happenstance, and in the agreement we reiterated that because they seemed to think it was like it wasn't happening, you know, like with all the robotic cameras that came in, we were never really appraised of that. And now in the agreement that we have now, we're supposed to be asked about that so that we can at least recommend it to the select board or to the town manager or whoever to the town. So when would you have the next sort of request for equipment itemization that you can present to our committee?
sure. Well, let me go back and answer your other question. The last major installment at Town Hall was very late in 2020, and those estimates were handled by Harbor Media because the procurement position, Kathy Riley, didn't exist at that time. And so Harbor Media fielded the estimates, presented the estimates to the cable committee, and then it was voted on at a select board meeting. There was a motion approved not to exceed a certain amount for that upgrade. It was a full video upgrade in the select board room. So that was fall of 2020. It did involve the cable committee. That is the earliest capital request that I'm aware of, because I started in March 2020. Then there was last year, we presented our capital needs to this committee, recommend to purchase, not recommended to reimburse by town administration. When is our next capital needs request going to come? Not soon, probably not this fiscal year. We're in pretty good shape. John, something you were involved with kind of right before my tenure, but with our former executive director, was the purchase of 3 Sony FS5s. And those were paid for by Harbor Media. Those cameras were paid for by Harbor Media. So in talking to our board, so kind of one of the fun things about coming in, you know, almost 4 years ago is looking back. So I checked with the board, and historically Harbor Media has always paid for the capital needs except for capital installed in a town-owned building. Just as the contract reads now, that's what was being executed in the past. We paid for it. Cameras, edit stations, etc. Right now we're in good shape because this past fiscal year, we did buy those new edit stations 3. We refurbished and recycled what we have, and we have 5 edit stations for our volunteers because we still have 8 to 10 and sometimes 12 folks a week coming in to learn editing, edit their own projects, edit for us, that kind of thing. So right now we're in pretty good shape, I would say.
Okay, I mean, there is funding there, and it would help you if you were putting some of the expenditures that you do have to relieve the operating expenses deficit that you have. So, you know, being able to use
it's kind of a tough
that
spot,
capital
right?
for things that if you need it, or like you were saying, I mean, at the end of the day, if you paid for the FS5s out of pocket, out of your operating, that's just money that you don't have in your bank, in your reserve to be able to use for those shortfalls. So, I mean, I just think all of that's appropriate. You've used those FS5s many, many times for government programming. So to me, it's all within that. But that's the reason why I think when we all of a sudden the committee wasn't involved with those kinds of approvals and didn't know about where it was coming. I just assumed they came from capital. You know, but
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
no one let us know. So.
We bought the new Panasonics ourselves too. So
yeah, so I think we could get that money back, because that's a pot of money that's in there that should be used for operating, not necessarily for, you know, and you know, I frankly think the town should come to us to ask us about what they want capital wise. Like, you know, getting another 5 robotic cameras might not be the most sensible thing in the world to do. You know, outfitting another room that's going to have like 1 or 2 meetings a month might not be a great expenditure, you know, because the towns, a lot of times, I think they want to have, you know, they want to access to these funds, you know, for their own purposes. But, you know, these funds are coming from the cable company. They're dedicated.
Yeah. Well, right now I can tell you the 2 big projects that are going on at Town Hall involving cable capital funds. The select board room needs an audio upgrade. So Kathy Riley and Bill Hardigan have been working with us on that. And I saw an update today, so that's moving forward, but that audio update desperately needs to happen. The cameras were updated late 2020. The second floor space has not been functioning. So we bring up our own equipment every time we record a meeting in there.
Right.
That's been since last September. And
Yeah,
that's a really big upgrade. And
well, that's also a drain on your expenses too, right? Because you have to bring more staff and things to be able to operate that other room, to be able to do a fly pack like that when you need to. And so there's other things that are happening that affect you financially when you have to facilitate that room that way.
yeah, I mean, John, not too much. We use our existing cameras and we've worked with Bill and IT so that the viewer at home would not know the difference in that second floor space, school committee room, for example. Well, now it's a school committee room on the second floor. They're hopefully not noticing a difference. It's still live, and then we air it for future viewing. But
how often a month is that room being used for that?
Weekly.
Weekly. So 4 times a month. Okay.
But those are 2 big capital projects that the town is handling that, is a proper use of cable funds for sure.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to add on the finance update?
No, I would just say, we do our best to mind some things. We've gotten some good relief on cutting some expenses. I had Hingham Municipal Light Plant call us because they thought our meter was broken. That's how diligent we've been about turning lights off and setting the thermostats. Honestly, we cut it from over $500 a month to about $225 a month. It makes a difference on a balance sheet.
Yeah, well, anything you can do. I think that's
Yeah,
good.
exactly. We cut our Verizon bill in half. So anyway, if you have any questions or people watching have any questions, give us a call, send us an email, harbormedia.org, and we'll do our best.
Okay, good. The other item on that financial update is you wanted to know about the normal information request. The one that I talked to Greg about, who we discussed first in terms of just looking at what the agreement with Norwell and Harbor Media was. You were gracious enough to send that. We're looking at that. I wanted to know, and I talked to Greg a little bit about the how the Norwell agreement worked with you in terms of the flat fee that you have versus the kind of arrangement we have, which is 90% of the revenue, and how that dovetailed, how that compared. So I had to, in order for me to get the information on the contract between Verizon and Comcast, so that I could find out more about that, and also find out maybe an update on how many subs Norwell has at the moment. I put they sort of insisted that I put a request for information that's like a Freedom of Information Act thing, and I haven't heard back from them yet. So I can discuss it in more detail next meeting when I get that information. Okay.
Well, the reason why I asked for it to be added to the agenda was because a new agenda had to be new meeting date, new agenda. So I thought there was a good opportunity. I received the email and then just replied also it could be added because I thought it was probably appropriate to talk about it in the cable committee meeting because it was a request of public information, which is probably fine. It's up to the town of Norwell to release that. I don't even have it, but we did give you our contract, which we're required to do, and our budgets. The budgets matched. We changed that 2 years ago so that you can see facilities cost. Very important to know what Norwell pays and how about a year ago when we renewed our lease, we had a 41% increase in our rent and our space. And so shared facility cost is really helping. So a quick summary would be, less cable fees each year for Hingham in actual cable revenue, increasing cost. So having a partner like Norwell help pay for that really helps. Most of the costs are direct for the team. So Hingham Cable Funds pays for Hingham equipment. Norwell Cable Funds pay for Norwell equipment, Norwell staff, Norwell health insurance, for example. but shared costs, facilities costs, it really makes a big difference, to have a partner contributing to that.
Yeah, I'm not disputing that. We're just trying to figure out like exactly how the Norwell contract works as compared to ours. We're just trying to compare it. And I've talked to the town manager about that. He's very interested in getting this material as well. He told me I could make the freedom of information, and we're going to discuss with the select board. We're going to have more on this next meeting. Just not prepared to do it just yet because I don't have the information.
I guess I wanted to open it up to the committee. So, we do provide the contract with Norwell that was requested and even put in the new Hingham contract a year and a half ago almost. And also the budget amount. So I explained how Hingham, we receive 4 quarterly checks of 95% of whatever's collected. So it's a little bit of an algebra equation, of the variable that's missing, because you don't know exactly what you're going to get each quarter, but you've built a budget based on last year's or slightly less than the year prior. Norwell, their cable committee gives us the go ahead each early spring, really February. Here's what we collected last year. You're safe building a budget to this amount. And then we build it to that. And then we get 2 checks from them. So for half and half. The reason why that's important to note is there was at least 1 year, I believe, where their actual collected was less than we had budgeted based on their prior year's earnings cable revenue, but they level funded us. They dipped in their own reserve so that we could still maintain that budget amount. Little different than getting 95% and kind of not knowing what you're going to collect.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we're trying to investigate, though, is in terms of whether Norwell's contract is similar to ours in terms of the amount of operating cash and how the capital is accounted for in terms of how they use it in Norwell. So we're just trying to find out, so that we can compare apples and apples to the way we fund it. So that's a little bit of just trying to get more information, but we don't know it yet. It might be exactly the same. I just don't know until I receive it from Norwell.
Well, is there anything? And again, I like doing it in the cable committee format because it wasn't brought up in a prior meeting, but this is a meeting and we could answer any questions.
Sure.
So, I just explained one difference is that Hingham funds at 95% of what they're bringing in real time. They get their quarterly check. We get 95% of it. Norwell says you're safe to build a budget to this because this is what we collected the year prior, and they send us 2 checks. It doesn't matter if they collect less. They still level fund us. For capital requests, I think it's very similar in that we present to the Norwell Cable Committee. Here are our capital requests. For example, we also in the past year just bought cameras for Norwell. They approve or disapprove, and then that is reimbursed. We actually purchase and then they reimburse. There's no reserve fund for Norwell, so everything is either approved or it's not approved.
Right.
There's no money.
But what we don't know is we don't know exactly how Norwell accounts for the cable money that they come in. When I talked to Greg, he said he wasn't quite sure what he thinks. They get one big check that comes in, but how do they account for capital like we do as opposed to the operating? So we're just trying to figure out how they do that. If they say, look, we get X and we're going to give the Harbor Media half of X and the rest of it's going to go to our capital because we're building a town hall, we would like to know that if that's the way they're accounting for it. Norwell can do whatever they want in terms of how they want to do it, and you have to make the agreement that you want to make with them. But I think it's just a matter of we wanted to go see the contract because I think Greg said he wasn't quite sure exactly how that worked itself out because I don't know because I haven't seen the contract.
So, John, this is Greg.
Hey, Greg.
I've been listening in. So that's not exactly what I said, I don't believe, but I certainly had some information that I didn't fully have about how much we were collecting specifically for capital versus operational. But what Michelle told you earlier is a little bit is true. In that we set up a contract, they made some requests about about what they needed for operational, and they went through the staffing and what they thought they needed, and it was pretty close to what we were collecting on an annual basis. And what I heard Michelle previously tell you, which is we had a shortfall in 2022, and we met our what we considered an obligation to Harbor Media to fund it the full amount, even though we were $40,000 down in our revenue. In 23, which just closed this last June, we collected more than Harbor Media asked for or budgeted for, at $275,000, $891. So again, on average, we are giving pretty much all we collect from the vendors of the suppliers of the video of cable rather. So when you were asking me about how much do you put into capital purchase versus operational, I was a little fuzzy on that detail, and in fact, I have more information about that now,
Okay.
which
All right, great.
we can go in. But either way, it's not. I'm not quite sure how that factors into any of your thinking in Hingham.
Yeah, no, I think we're just
or
trying.
whether it's any of your business, to be honest.
Well, no, I mean, it's just a matter of, Hingham Community Access Media, which is how they're chartered, I think that the town would just like to know that what the deals are. In particular, if they're, Harbor Media has made, obviously they have Norwell as a vendor, or someone that helps fund them. And there is a possibility of other towns doing that as well. And they've made they've had aspirations to do that in the past, and that might or might not happen in the future as a way of looking at the industry, where there could be a lot of cord cutting, there could be a lot of expenses going around. And I advocate for more of these kinds of joint ventures where, Norwell is helping underwrite, like Michelle has sort of pointed out, that it's a good thing for them in terms of being more efficient. So I think we're just trying to look at the way that the different towns and the deals that Harbor Media is making, so that we can, if we do any, entreaties out to other towns and things like that to joint venture, we know what everybody's doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
again, it's public information, and I'm confident you'll get that in the short term. I did speak to the accountant today, and she pointed out that they have 10 days to respond, and which they will. So
yeah, no, she told me that as well, because I followed up, and she was very nice about it, and I totally understand. That's why, I can't be prepared to talk about something I don't have in my hands. So
obviously,
you obviously know more about it.
Well, I did. Well, I made sure I understood where they were, and I know they thought some of your requests seem extreme. For example, you wanted the last 3 cable agreements with Comcast and Verizon, and she said that's going back 30 years maybe, and I said no, that's it. So she's going to give you the last 3 years worth, and those kinds of things. You may disagree, but that's what she planned to do.
Do you do 10-year deals or 5-year deals with the
well, I again, that was her assumption, that there were 10-year deals, because that's what we had most recently with Comcast.
Oh, okay, because we've done 5-year deals. That's all they do with us.
We had a long one. I don't even remember what this most recent renewal was. I think it is 10 years. Verizon, we are about to negotiate. We've only had 1 or 2 anyway with them. But again, we haven't entered into a negotiation with them at this point. But in any case, our arrangements are different than yours. We approached it as, what type of work, what type of effort with staffing do you expect to have? What do you think you need? They told us. We said that fits within our model of using our current revenue, or at least the previous year's revenue. We are preserving our what I always call the principal for a build out of a studio that we expect to do in the next year or so. So, and anyway, it's a different model than you set up. And again, that's a legacy of how Harbor Media started with the town of Hingham and how we started with Harbor Media.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. And we just, our town just wants to know so that we can compare and contrast as we think about other ways that there might be other outreaches to other towns, things like that. We just
Sure.
have to prepare for the future to a certain degree. I'm just going to stop one thing though. Greg McBride, who just was speaking, this is for the benefit of our minutes. Greg, can you tell us a little bit about your role in Norwell and your role on Harbor Media's board so that everybody kind of has context for what you are?
Sure. So I am, let's see, how did I start this? I got involved in the cable committee when I became a selectman in Norwell a number of years ago now. At the time, we had a very antiquated system in place. We had old equipment. We had older videographers who didn't have any real knowledge about anything, and so we went through a period where we upgraded our systems and hired an employee, a couple of employees, and were able to start things. But again, we were still doing things somewhat on a shoestring, not because we didn't have the money, because we didn't know any better. And at one point, we decided that we couldn't do anything further with our limited expertise, and so we went out looking for a partner. And we sent letters to all of the surrounding towns, Situate, Cohasset, Hanover, even Rockland, and Hingham, and Harbor Media responded on behalf of Hingham. It was the only response that we got, and we started a initial period just to see, whether we enjoyed dancing with each other, and then later move that into an actual contract. My involvement was, as I said, originally as a selectman, and trying to reinvigorate our cable committee because it was a very limited group of people. And I am still, for better or for worse, on the cable committee in Norwell. One of the stipulations that the town of Norwell made in our negotiations with with Harbor Media was that we have a position on the board. And that was really just to have a voice on the Harbor Media. And it took a while for that to happen. And I'm sure you know the history of that. And Michelle is always telling us, yes, we're working on it. And it went on for several years.
To the bylaws.
Yeah. And so finally, there was an opportunity to put a person from Norwell on there. We had others that we were hoping we would put on there. And for one reason or another, they weren't able to do that. So I stepped up, and I am now one of the members of the Harbor Media Board representing Norwell. It's not exactly wasn't my choice in life, but it is something that I think we needed to have. So my role on the Norwell Cable Committee is somewhat limited now because of the inherent conflict.
Right. Yeah, I would think that's going to be you can't oversee the people you're overseeing.
Exactly, and so
I wouldn't feel comfortable doing it myself.
So we have recently added a couple of members and hope to add at least one more, so that I can either step back or at least step away from being the organizer. I refuse to be the chair because of that conflict, but I'm still the primary organizer at this time.
Well, that's good, and you're probably aware that the Harbor Media Board has to have a majority of Hingham members on the board.
Absolutely,
and that's just the way that our agreement is done. But that's great. You've been very, very helpful trying to pull it all together in terms of sharing with us how things work, because I think our committee has always wondered how it worked. It was a little bit of a fait accompli sent to our town about the deal with Norwell in the beginning. This predates Michelle, we were never told. It just was like, oh, here's what we're doing. And it was like, as being Hingham Community Access Media is the formal name, we were a little nonplussed about it, to be honest with you, Craig. So we're happy that you're aboard. We think it's a good thing. We're thinking about ways in which we might be able to expand that if need be, because, you know, as Michelle has pointed out astutely, that we need to think about the expenses. Anyway, we got to move on because I know Heather's got to go.
Yes.
And I want her to do her report. So I'm going to pivot and turn and see if we could just head over to schools update right now.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. So I believe a new document was shared either today or yesterday. The Christina put together an education tracking sheet. It's via Google Sheets. So just put that on the radar for folks. There's 3 tabs. The contributed content is on the 3rd tab, EDU program HPS. So just want to mention that's where you can find it. We did launch a new video series called In Conversation with Hingham Public Schools. And our superintendent has graciously offered to be the host of the show. So the plan was before the school year ramped up, we were going to get as many people in to do the interviews and then kind of schedule them out, like, you know, 1 a month or something like that. So far I think we filmed 6 people, but it could be more because I wasn't there the second day. And I feel like I believe 3 have been aired.
What's the mix? What's the mix of people?
It's mostly administrators. So the very first episode was with the assistant superintendent. Second episode was with the student services executive director, the interim. And then I interviewed Margaret, which reviewing that video is just horrible, seeing yourself on video. But so that one went well. And then they started to do department directors, so like director of counseling, Rick Swanson, principal. I can't remember who the other one. Oh, Jim Quattromoni, the director of athletics. So definitely a good mix, just really to continue, you know, opening that window or door. Is it opening the door or window? I don't know. Letting people in to see kind of what makes the schools tick. And Margaret's a great, our superintendent is a great host there. She's, you know, asked really good questions and much better than I did.
Are these pieces purely of talking heads, or are they also, B-roll coverage and things of that nature? Are you making short little profiles, I guess, is what
right. So I guess I misspoke when I said contributed content. Harbor Media has been crucial in this series because it's actually been filmed in their studio. And then they're 10 minutes, but Christina, I believe maybe the sole editor, I'm not sure, but she edits them down to be exactly 10 minutes and uses a ton of B-roll. And it's been so fantastic. I've really noticed the quality of the videos just simply with that B-roll, because, you know, if it was a straight interview, it might not be as engaging, but she's pulling, you know, videos from file folders from 10 years ago, maybe. So she's working really hard on the education videos, and it really shows. So I appreciate Christina and Harbor Media and everything like that to produce these episodes.
How about the student generated stuff that we talked about?
Yep.
How's that going?
Yeah. So I believe it's going well. So far, so the conversation happened last May. I didn't know that conversation actually happened, but the media studies teacher, the principal, and the superintendent all met, and the deliverable was more student generated content come September, and that's already what's been happening. There's been less emphasis on the Friday show, which the Friday show can't be aired publicly because they have copyrighted material, and the preface of the Friday show is just like, you know, have fun, be informative, but have fun, and don't worry, this won't go anywhere type thing. So that's going to remain just a high school effort, but along with that, the curriculum has shifted to be more student generated, and we've already seen content from them, good good content. And there was one, Rick Swanson at the high school, the principal, he did a open house kind of presentation, but the media team actually like queued up his conversation on the teleprompter camera setup. So, they did that, and then they edited the video together to have the PowerPoint slides like superimposed and stuff like that. So technically it's not student, like, a student didn't do this like on his lunch hour or whatever. It's the class that's doing the contributed content, but I think it's very good quality.
And what kind of equipment do they use? Are they borrowing equipment from Harbor Media? Are they using their iPhones, or what's the deal?
I believe they have in-house cameras, like good, decent cameras, but I'm not sure. That's actually the other point that I want to maybe get to. I just have a few more minutes here. We have to do kind of a analysis of what we have and what we might want to look into. Do you have any other questions about that specifically before I bring the next thing up?
I
No.
was just going to add that on the education tracking document, there's a link to anything Harbor Media has created, any and all that HPS has contributed. There's a video on demand link. So if you'd like to see what the students are producing, you don't have to know the title. It's on the education tracking document for you.
No, I was just thinking that the students probably know that they could, if they're trained and they are appropriate, it's appropriate for them to use it. They can use some of the Harbor Media equipment. It's all available. So I would hope that the teachers would let them know that if they needed to step it up, and depending on what they needed, it might be just as simple as a lavalier mic, so they get better sound.
I think they have a decent amount of hardware because the videos have been
Pretty good.
have high quality. But we can always mention it to Glenda Garland to ask to see if they need upgrades to any of the equipment.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead if you have something else you wanted to.
Yeah. So when Jim Quattromoni, the athletics director, was actually in Harbor Media, the conversation came up as to how to get sports programming available permanently from the schools on Harbor Media. So that was sort of I know there is a history with this, and I'm newer on the scene, so I don't know all of it. But what I wanted to bring up is to start doing the sports broadcasting, we would need to ensure that we had the correct infrastructure, which we have to kind of figure out what we actually have there. And then if we were to, is it possible to use cable funds to fund a position that specific, like a sports broadcaster? Because in the past we tried to do students after school, and there was just no coverage. Students just have way too much going on. They're in sports themselves. They have tutoring, they have jobs. They just, the model to have students film the games just doesn't work. So if we want to get the sports programming, we probably have to hire somebody part-time. And I just wondered how we could possibly access cable funds for that. And just start the conversation. How can we accomplish this?
Well, I don't know. I think I'd have to give it a think. I'm sure Michelle would as well. Maybe there's a way to brainstorm about being able to use some of that, or raise money from it from sports partnership, or a hybrid of things that we've done in the past where, I know some cable operations. I just heard the other day that, Nantucket Cable is doing, and they're not doing a lot of the other programming. They're doing live football games, because that's just something that they pivoted and turned to. So they obviously found a way to do it. I think they maybe got sponsors to do it, like many of the games, that's the kind of thing that maybe would be something that if we enhanced our ability to do enhanced underwriting and sponsorships, like Harbor Media, has done in the past, but needs to probably do more of, maybe that's a way of being able to fund some of those positions. And would the cable funds kickstart it? Maybe it would mean shifting some of the cable funds we give you now for the teachers and shifting it more to that, depending on if that's a higher priority. But I think maybe that's something we should think about and then put it on another agenda next month to discuss. That's an interesting idea.
Yeah,
So the other thing we talked about was possibly a grant application.
Yeah.
And we could help with brainstorming and actually kind of looking at the existing equipment because for lack of a better term, during COVID, we did work with the athletic department at the high school and some Hingham Sports Partnership parents, and we helped train them on some equipment they already had. And then we collaborated with them and that they would give us their HPS YouTube streaming URL, and then we would paste that. Literally, it's kind of a fun copy paste into our television software, and those games were broadcast live, cablecast live on our local channels. But as Heather pointed out, they had trouble staffing. So we could pick up the ball, if I may say that, from that point and move it forward, and maybe add in the short term, at least, to have a successful run at it. Maybe it would be a great Harbor Media production grant application to say, here are the funds we need for additional equipment, for staffing to carry live sports, a male sport, a female sport, that kind of thing on the field or in the gym. I did explain to Heather, and we've talked to Jim before too, we have to have an Ethernet port to make this happen. We need a wired internet connection. You could also rent those Verizon 5G packs, which we have had to do also for other productions. So anyway, we're open to it. It could be a grant application.
Are you talking about live sports, or are you talking about was he indicating live sports or tape delay?
we can't keep tapes of the games just because other teams can use that, in the locker for video replay. So
they
it's
would air
very
live.
special.
They would
It'd
air
be live and that's it.
And then would they replay on Harbor Media? Could they do
I
that?
think he said it's okay to replay on cable, but if you had it on demand, he doesn't want it on demand. He
We
thinks
would
that's
disable video on demand, John, and we've done that for South Shore Conservatory performances or other special performances that only play on television. They don't want the online component.
Mhm. All right. Well, I got to run, but I'm glad we brought this up, and then hopefully we can touch base about it next meeting. Okay.
Great. Thanks.
Sorry, I gotta bow out. Thanks. Bye.
We'll see you. So Harbor Media grant update. You want to try and just tell us like what the I know you've awarded 3. Maybe give us the list and tell us maybe how they're doing and when you expect to see a master.
Sure. Yeah. So for the grant program, the first cycle closed the end of June, May 1st through June 30th. And the committee received the applications. We ended up funding 5 projects. And I think all are in production right now. In terms of timing, the pickleball productions called Dinklings. Also, if you go on Hingham Anchor and search Harbor Media, you'll see that there's an update press release post on each one of the productions. So Dinklings is a 10 or so minute comedy, SAG production, SAG micro budget production. So that wrapped in terms of shooting, I believe 2 weekends ago. And so that's an edit phase right now. We also funded a project called Hingham Immigration Diaries. It's 5 episodes. 1 episode was shot this Saturday in the studio, and it's a family who emigrated to the United States from another country and lives in Hingham and is sharing their story. Who
was awarded that project?
Her name is Jury Love. And she lives in Foxborough, and her Hingham sponsor is a member of the Hingham Unity Council.
Okay.
We have a project from the Company Theater. Co-founder of the Company Theater in Norwell is Hingham resident Zoe. And she co-wrote an original production called Born to Do This. We're working on a documentary, and we covered the reimbursement costs for them for a professional production company to shoot and record their musical, which is being used in the documentary called Born to Do This, a rock opera of Joan of Arc.
Nice. And so the deliverable on that will be the documentary as well as the performance?
Yes, because the grant paid for the cost of the professional production company to record and edit it. And the majority of that footage is being used in the documentary. We're working on the documentary as public programming.
And all the rights are fine because she made it herself, right?
Yes, she and Michael, they
That's great.
co-wrote. Yeah,
That's-
it's wonderful. It's original. It's an original musical, people, born right here, just like she did Paragon Park many years ago. Also, Hingham Historical Society received a grant for mini videos, historical videos that showcase different spots around town. They'll be used as public programming, obviously, and in the Hingham Historical Museum as video shorts. And also Substance Free 02043, which is an interview format shot in our studio. They had been producing, Hingham Cares had been producing that as public programming, and then took the step further to have their professional production company take over the audio and the visual, not just the audio on their part, us doing the visual. So they took over the audio and visual of those interviews for recording, editing, adding B-roll and images, that kind of thing.
And who was the Hingham Connect on that? And who's the producer?
Yep, that was Hingham Cares. So
it's Kristen,
Elizabeth Dings is the producer of Dinklings, the mini SAG comedy production. Hingham Historical Society.
But Kristen is the producer of it because that's Hingham Cares, right?
Yes.
Okay. So she was awarded. Kristen, you were awarded the grant, right?
We were awarded the grant, but we aren't actually receiving the funding. It goes straight out the door to our production company, Mudhouse Media. So there's no like staff costs or anything like that. It goes straight to the production company.
Yeah, no, that's perfectly fine. I think the only issue is being on the board of, you're not on the board yet, so it was awarded already. So we can't make complaints about it. It would be a problem if I made a proposal and I got awarded something as a member of the committee.
The only conflict is John, if you were paid, you could produce all day long. You could shoot all day long. Just like Margie Sullivan is acting as a no fee producer on Dinklings.
Right.
This is an interesting development, and I didn't realize that. I've been keeping my nose out of.
Well, I just wouldn't want to use any kind of influence on what the cable committee does. So that's my own. I don't know. I have to do the conflict of interest training. John, have you done yours yet? So I got to find out whether.
Let me do that training, and we'll see where we come out.
Yeah, no, that's why we listed. We circulated a resource guide for people applying for the grant to say here are paid and unpaid resources. And John, at the time, you were okay being listed as an unpaid resource to produce or direct or shoot, however someone might need you, just to make the budget, more affordable, more efficient. Several members of our board are on there if they could be of assistance but not receive any payment. That's why we ask in the budget application that people list every single person getting paid or involved at a zero cost.
Yeah, so I'm involved.
You understand that it does. It's a little, because it's people that are on the inside getting the grant. That's where we just have to be, I think, a little bit careful about it all.
Absolutely, yeah.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, if you got a board member that's basically benefited, whether they're getting a reel out of it or they're even if they're unpaid, they're getting some kind of kudo out of it. So I mean, it's a matter. I just think it's kind of pushing the envelope a little bit with it, But I mean, I think the idea of the grant was to have outside people that are bringing all fresh new ideas to it, as opposed to the inside people, like just sort of figuring out a way to do it. And I mean, I just think that it's pushing the envelope a little bit. That's my own opinion.
So we should talk about that, because when this was all presented to the cable committee, it was actually the opposite was recommended, that there's a lot of talent between cable committee, the board, other people who might be able to help these productions, but keep the budget down by offering their services at no charge and not benefiting monetarily from it.
Yeah, I think it's more got to do with the selection process of it all and how it strengthens the proposal and tips the scales a little bit towards people who are on the inside. I think that's the only thing we have to be wary
Yeah,
of.
so I can say on the Dinklings piece, that was an afterthought. It was not included, and it wasn't even a plan. Those people didn't even know each other. It was after the fact. Hey, I can help you out if you need any help. It wasn't part of the application.
I mean, there's no conflict if John and I decide we want to do, a thing on the history of, suspenders, for in Hingham, we could do that show on our own and produce it and do whatever and get unpaid or whatever. I mean, I don't think that's a problem, but I think when it comes to the production grant, I think we just have to be careful that because I mean, the people that are applying for it might say, well, you're giving it all to your cronies. It's like, even if they're not paid, they're not necessarily going to know that. I just think we have to be careful about that.
Okay, well, what I would prefer, honestly, is that I want to make sure to take in all the feedback. And like I said, it's completely different than what was discussed before, and that it was encouraged that people, because there are people involved in this business and that have good ideas or support, that they be listed as unpaid resources on our resource document for applicants. I guess I would
don't know.
rather,
I don't see that it's the same issue. I see that as sort of like another way of looking at it. I don't think we discussed that any kind of conflict of interest thing on that. I think we thought it was just sort of implicit, But obviously, cable committee people, I think, are very specifically not allowed to be part of it. In the contract.
Unpaid, you're listed as, because you're a producer and a director and shooter, you're listed on that resource, and you thought that was a great idea at the time.
Well, no, but I mean, if I work with you guys, I think that's fine to being like on other programming, but the production grant, where
no, that's what
competitive
I'm talking about.
grant, I think that's a separate thing. I think
that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
We discussed it, and it was said that, hey, there are so many people who have production experience. If it helps the grant applicants with their budgets as an unpaid resource, but still getting someone who has experience and is local, then it just enhances the production, but doesn't.
Oh yeah, no. I think local. I'm just saying the people on the cable committee, and or of positions of leadership within Harbor Media. I think those are the only people that I would say might have an issue with it. Everybody else is fair game,
So I really want to get to the bottom of this, because like I said, I feel like it is in complete opposition of what was agreed upon and circulated, whatever. So I want to get it right. So the resource document, it's included in the Harbor Media Production Grant Toolkit. It says, here are a list of paid and unpaid resources. So people can look through that to find a videographer, to find an editor. And then it says paid or unpaid is what it says, because of conflict of interest. For example, for you, John, I specifically got your permission for that before I finalized that document. If someone submits an application and they're looking for, director help, should they use your, name and contact you for that? Or should you feel you should be taken off the list? And does it matter to you if that's before they submit the application or after? Because it sounds like it might have to do with before the application is submitted, we go, well, we have to fund this. John Rice is on the crew. Is that what you mean?
I think for the production grant, I'd have to steer clear of it. I mean, personally, as a cable advisory board member, I think in terms of your public programming and your education programming and government programming, if I decided to do like I did the Shrek video, I think that's fine. I don't think that's a problem. I think it's when it's a competitive production grant where you're sort of squaring off against other people. That's where I feel like it's a little bit more problematic. But I would have to look at what the conflict of interest rules really are, and seeing as that I'm doing the training in the next couple of weeks, I'll probably find out more about it, because they get real specific about what you can and cannot do. I just want to make sure that I'm in compliance.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And that's why, like I said, I really would love to clear it up with the cable committee, because we discussed it, and I thought what we came up with was very fair and in compliance and agreed upon. So that's why I'm just kind of seeking clarity now, because I thought it was a great idea. It wasn't even my idea.
When you do the conflict
It
of
was the
interest,
result of a cable committee meeting, and I thought it was a great idea. So I created a list of resources and called out who was unpaid because I thought we agreed to it.
sometimes when you do the conflict of interest, like a quiz that they give you, right? They'll have a multiple choice, right? And I might have picked the one that we're just doing right now, and then they go, "Whoop, no, that's not right. It's number 18. You're not
Okay.
supposed to do it," you know? So
Yep.
there's a lot of like nuances, and some of it's not completely clear, and you have to kind of like figure out what that is. I just want to make sure I'm in compliance. And
Yeah,
other
and
folks-
I'm with you too. I mean, I think I stated in the initial materials, we're going to learn a lot through the grant process each cycle. And one change we did make at Harbor Media, because the application committee is comprised of 2 Hingham residents and either Harbor Media board member or employee. And I served on the first cycle. And one thing I walked away from after the first cycle was that it puts me in a tough position to be the promoter, the evangelizer. This is an amazing program. You should look into it. You should apply, and then turn around and be on the committee that says yes or no, your project is being awarded. And so we have Harbor Media board members with production experience that are rotating in as the Harbor Media third person on the committee.
Good idea. I think that to freshen that up, it gives good perspective. I think all the judges should maybe at different times, maybe keep one consistent and revolve it around. I think that's a good idea. That way you'll get fresh people with fresh eyes and perspectives about what works, what doesn't,
I have
So
a couple,
we made that change.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
have a couple of questions about the grant program. I'm just curious, Michelle, what your general view of the quantity and quality of submissions was.
So based on the first cycle, we had 7 applications. We awarded 5. I feel that some of the applications probably would have been terrific public programming. And we may find ourselves, or the committee may find themselves not awarding and saying, please bring this to the Harbor Media team. This is public programming, versus others that are hiring professionals to produce this great idea that they have. That's the other reason I don't think that the executive director or an employee should be in that position of making the decisions. We're working with people every day on public programming. So other than that, I am very excited about what's being produced right now. And it's that whole idea, John, way back when this was just a little baby idea, right? That this is supposed to punch up the channels. It's supposed to get more people involved. We're offering a financial incentive for someone to produce their own show where they may not have the time in their everyday life with work and family and school and all of the things. Now they're making it a professional production. They're overseeing professional shooting, editing, animating, that kind of thing. If I could just be really transparent, I think that with some of the productions, the cable committee might say, hey, this really should have just been public programming, but you really don't have that option in an application process. You don't know who the shooters are. You don't know who the editors are. If they want to use our studio, which was brought up many times, use Harbor Media Studio, use Harbor Media equipment, whatever you can to make your application more affordable. Okay, but then it might not be as well produced or professional as you like. And we don't have a control mechanism for that, given the way the grant program is described in our contract. So I'm excited. I always have a little trepidation that there is a lot, if you read in the Hingham contract with Harbor Media, there's a lot Harbor Media does not control. And so when you see the final, that is the final.
Michelle, could I ask a question about that?
Yes.
Is it possible that you might receive something from one of the grant recipients that you consider unairable? Like something that you wouldn't want to put on the air because of the low production quality or other factors?
I think there's a risk there. We do a ton of work on the front end. The committee asked a lot of questions to the applicants to get a better understanding or even to clarify some details. But there aren't a lot of checks and balances. And the only thing written in the contract that Harbor Media can comment on and push back on would be of a technical nature. If the volume's not good, if the video quality is not good, we would send it back. And the only thing we really have hovering over someone would be the final payment, right? So that's the situation.
I think it's public. It's cable access programming. It's public programming. You kind of have to air it. I mean, that's just the way the cable law is written.
Well, from a subject matter, absolutely. But for quality,
Robin Bird.
Because from a quality perspective, folks are being reimbursed. And so when if they say videographer fees are $2,500 and they list the person's name and this is how much they're getting paid, we don't know if that person is a professional videographer or if that's someone who's agreed to hold a camera.
Yeah, I mean, I think that part of the production grant process is to really look at, I mean, part of the criteria is look at the team and look at who the people are and have trust in what they've done. Look at their reel, look what they've done. I mean, I think that that's, that's got a lot to do with the committee being savvy enough to understand, like, if the proposal has a good shot of being really great, that's the whole part of it. And I think we've discussed that if you don't feel confident, if say you only got 4 proposals and you had the money in the bank and you said, look, there's only 2 of them that are really in our estimation from this committee to be good, good enough for, the money that we're giving, we're going to take that other money and bank it for another time. And when we do get better proposals. So I think you have a little bit of flexibility to ensure. I mean, I think a competitive bid situation is always going to give you a better choice of things to do. I think production is an exact thing. I mean, there are times when, sometimes some productions get out of hand and too many cooks in the kitchen and, there's a problem. I wouldn't be surprised if you have some that can't deliver for one reason or another, need finishing funds or whatever. I think that's something that, they should be giving you updates on how the production's going. You shouldn't supervise it, but you should know that if, not get a big surprise if they get into trouble. Because I mean, I've seen lots of things where people underestimate like how long it's going to take to edit. And the next thing you know, they got a professional editor and they estimated 30 hours to edit the piece. And it really is a 60-hour thing because they decided to add a lot of graphics and a lot of this and a lot of that as they, you get into production and it's like, might as well do that, might as well do this. Well, it costs when you might as well sometimes.
Yeah, of course.
And so I think you've said to us, it's a learning process right now, and that, we're going to see how this first round goes. I think it's great that John's asking the question about how everybody's doing. And it's a good update.
Yeah, so I'm in touch with all 5 producers. Everything is in production, and it is like managing 5 other productions that are going on right now. So so it's a good thing. We did receive our first today application for the news cycle, which kicked off October 1st. So October 1st through November 30th, we are accepting applications. We received one today, and it focuses on various interesting jobs around the town of Hingham.
What are you doing to promote the next cycle?
So we have our ads running at the Loring and the Shipyard theaters. We have 30-second. I've gone to the movies. I've seen it. We're airing that also, obviously, on our channels and our social media. And we have our second story on the Hingham Anchor in the past 6 months, one for the first cycle and then now for this cycle.
Michelle, when you turn down a grant proposal, is there any level of feedback or is it more of an opaque turn down?
Feedback.
Okay. So
opportunity to resubmit if the criteria are addressed.
Okay.
And I would say, just, to your point, John, we have a certain amount that we hope to give away each cycle, each year/cycle for the 5 years. And we gave out less than that in our first cycle.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of you eventually give it all away, or you give it away a following year too, and it's just a matter of try to make sure that.
So we're having a second cycle.
Yeah,
So
I mean, the goal is to get better production quality in there, and to have diversity, and you know, it sounds like you achieved that in that first cycle, from what you've described, and proof will be in the pudding, right?
it will be it will be fun to watch, and we'll
Yeah.
do a lot of promotion around that. And
I think it would be great to, I've seen Nantucket do this with their shorts festivals and things like that. When you premiere these things, to maybe have a live screening, maybe a fundraiser for your group. You know, lots of different ideas that you could do to maybe have a special event or something. Maybe the Loring. I know the Loring is sort of.
yeah.
They have to give you screening time. I've used it in the past. It's not always, sometimes it's Saturday morning before they air their stuff, but you could do special invites and stuff. And they have a nice projector up there that will put it in full glory.
I think it'd be fantastic. So we've been talking about that. We'd really like to showcase that to a broader set of the community.
Yeah, you should. Okay, so we have public comments. Any public comments? Unless there's no more public here.
Well, technically I'm the public, right?
Oh, you're the public. Okay, Kristen, you have anything else to say?
I'll represent the public. I would love some clarification on whether or not I should continue harassing the Board of Selectmen to get an appointment to this committee, because if there's a conflict of interest or a perceived conflict of interest, obviously that's an issue. I was under the impression that simply working for the company where the grant, we are a recipient of the grant, but not getting paid directly by the grant doesn't create conflict.
No, Kristen, I don't think there's any conflict because you're not on the committee yet, and you've got this, you know, fair and square for your organization beforehand. You've obviously been a valuable member of the Harbor Media public programming team for many, you know, for years, and so I think that's not going to be an issue. I think what we got to do is we got to help you out by getting this in front of the select board.
I think David Jones got me in front of the select board right quick. You know,
yeah, I think we just got to advocate for you more, Kristen. So maybe you can email me, and we'll try and set up a time to either, you know, go up to town hall and ring the bell. Sure.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Is that okay? Great. Yeah, we need members. So, you know, it's like when we get a live one, we got to embrace them. You know.
Well, and my heart is absolutely in this too, and I've gotten to know Michelle so well over the past couple of years. Hingham Cares does work so closely, so
yeah, and you bring a lot of insights to the table here, and I think that's great.
Terrific, thank you.
So our next meeting, you know, without talking to Dave a little bit about when he wants to do it, I suppose we could take a stab at a date right now. It's the Tuesdays, I think, are working for folks. So would the 7th work for people?
That's election day.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's election day in other communities, but it's not election day for Hingham, obviously.
Yeah, it's not election day for Hingham, so it probably doesn't really matter because there's no election. Yeah, why don't we do that Tuesday? And if anybody has an issue, we'll change it out. We have time.
So Tuesday the 7th?
Yeah.
Okay, that works for me.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. I motion to adjourn.
Seconded. Aye.
I guess that's we lost our quorum here, but I think we could still adjourn. Okay, great. It's good to see you all.
Stay on this call to infinity or beyond.
Okay, bye guys.
All right, good night. Thank you.
To contact the Hingham Cable TV Advisory Committee, you can reach us at cac@hingham-ma.gov, or you can visit our webpage at the link shown here, or just scan the QR code. Thanks for watching.